Hello and welcome to another reinforced tungsten container of high-pressure, almost breaking news components right here on the increasingly popular Everything Electric Tech channel. We've got a scintillating lineup of topics for you with expressions of joy, of optimism, positivity, and maybe every now and then just the most subtle sprinkling of fury and annoyance at the abject stupidity of a minority of the human race. So, let's get on with the show.
Our 3 free YouTube channels on EVs and clean energy tech are funded by our fun-packed Test Drive Tastic events in the North, West and Greater London, and our events down under. Next up, Everything Electric Sydney 2026. Plus, check out everythingelectric.store for merch and much more.
First story, and I'll start with battery swapping. Now, this is fascinating. This was discussed with great enthusiasm about 15 years ago, and it was seen as a way of reducing the massive, catastrophic anxiety that we were repeatedly told we would always feel if we couldn't refuel an electric vehicle in 20 seconds. Of course, the people who were pushing that idea were the fossil fuel lobbyists, but we didn't know that back then. This is like 15 years ago. There was an early battery swap company that came out of Israel called Better Place, which existed between about 2007 and 2013. And they installed battery swapping stations in Israel, in Hawaii, and in Denmark. But the company went bust and the whole idea kind of evaporated. There was a moment a few years later when Tesla, at one of their launches, showed that they could swap the battery in a Tesla Model S in less time than it took to fill up the tank of a combustion car. But they did it once at a special event. Nothing was ever heard of that again. Then around 2013, I started to hear about this electric car company in China called NIO. They had developed a vehicle with a swappable battery, and they even installed a battery swapping station in Shanghai. You'd drive in, the car would stop, you'd hear, and then the battery would fall out from underneath, it would get taken away by a robot, a new battery that was fully charged would come in and it goes and off you drive. Now, because of the previous battery swap hoopla, that I didn't really pay that much attention to this story. But then our man in Shanghai, we've got a man in Shanghai, Elliot Richards, he explained that there was a whole network of NIO battery swap stations across China, and the system had become very popular. Now, when I was in China a few months ago, I drove in an NIO ET9 with Elliot to a battery swap station and experienced this thing firsthand. It took just over 3 minutes. It's like 3 minutes and 7 seconds to swap out a completely depleted battery and replace it with a fully charged one. I mean, it's pretty quick. And I was impressed. And I knew they'd done quite a few of these battery swaps by that time. Then this week, I see that NIO have just announced that they've successfully swapped batteries in their vehicles 90 million times. This is not a fad. This is a business that they seem to have managed to make work. Or have they? Can they really afford to lose money doing these battery swaps, as some people claim? I mean, 90 million battery swaps is really no small potatoes, is it? And on an interesting side note, NIO recently introduced a 150 kilowatt hour battery pack that fits in the same size slot in the bottom of the car as a 75 kilowatt. That is quite impressive. Now, they are using what they describe as semi-solid state battery chemistry, proper cutting-edge stuff. So when you arrive at a battery swap station now, run by NIO, you can choose between a 75 kilowatt hour, 100 or 150 kilowatt hour pack. The subscription to use the 75 kilowatt hour pack is by far the cheapest, and the 150 kilowatt hour pack is just slightly eye-wateringly expensive. They found that the vast majority of people pick the cheapest 75 kilowatt hour option because they understand they don't drive 1,000 kilometers every day, even in China. So they have now withdrawn the 150 kilowatt hour pack, not because it doesn't work, but because nobody wants it. Here's a bit of conjecture on my part, though, slightly to the side. Each of these battery swap stations holds around 23 battery packs with a capacity of between 75 and 100 kilowatt hours, which tots up to something around 2.3 megawatt hours per battery swap station. That's potential storage. It's going to be less than that because not all the batteries are going to be full, but it has the capacity of that. which, when not being swapped or being charged, it means NIO can buy electricity at the very cheapest rates at special times of the day and sell electricity during peak demand at a profit. Now, as we know, scale really counts in this sort of thing. And NIO currently operates 3,555 battery swap stations in China. So that's, in total, if you add it all up, that's around 8 and a bit gigawatt hours of distributed storage. Of course, there are downsides. With all things, there's downsides. For every one car NIO produced, they probably need to manufacture 2 or maybe even 3 battery packs, which, when they started doing this 12 years ago, was an enormous investment. But the price of batteries has fallen so dramatically, especially for Chinese manufacturers. So NIO have effectively developed a whole new energy system that would have been unimaginable 20 years ago. Solar panels in fields. Now, this is becoming ever more common sight around the globe due to new materials and technologies, plus an astonishing ramping up of manufacturing. The cost of solar panels has dropped by 90%, 90% in the last 10 years. But in my lifetime, the drop is just extraordinary. Back when I was a long-haired, alternative society dropout hippie commune dweller in the mid-1970s, it cost over $100 a watt to produce photovoltaic panels. They're basically used by NASA in space. Today, it costs less than 1 cent. So it's gone from $100 a watt to 1 cent a watt, meaning that the cheapest way to produce electricity by a country mile is by using solar PV. Now, I want to quickly add the caveat that I'm firmly of the school of thought that knows the idiocy, the utter knuckle-dragging idiocy of building new houses, hospitals, schools, and in particular massive warehouses or huge data centres without integrating the absolute maximum amount of solar panels on the roof. I don't care where it is, you need to do that. Anyone in the building industry who does not do this should face immediate imprisonment and a brutal company-destroying fine. Not that I'm biased. But before you get all humpy-pumpy about solar destroying farmland, just hold hard there, NIMBY warrior. I know for a fact, because I walked around the same fields for 37 years. Huge areas of farmland in Europe, particularly in the USA and in Australia, where I am now, we grow crops to produce fuel. Not food, fuel. Yes, I'm talking about lovely, clean bioethanol that some truck companies advertise on the side of their trucks as being green or sustainable. So much better than fossil fuel. Anyway, a little bit of analysis shows the hopeless con job of growing crops to produce fuel. If you are growing corn to produce corn ethanol, 1 acre of soil produces enough fuel to power an average combustion engine vehicle 9,300 miles. What? That's amazing. I mean, that's incredible. For goodness sake, that's the answer. Let's stop all this messing around with stupid electric cars. Let's just grow more corn and turn it into beautiful, ethical, clean, spotless, sustainable biofuel. Well, okay, now let's just quickly, before we start planting the corn, let's just compare that same acre of land, now utterly despoiled by rows of the very latest version of super cheap solar panels. Oh my God, farmlands, we're all going to starve to death because solar is just taking over the whole planet. Over the same period of time it takes to grow the corn, over the same amount of land, the panels will produce enough electricity to power an electric vehicle just over, okay, I see, yes, just over 3 million miles. 9,300 miles as opposed to 3 million miles. Yes, okay. Yes, I can see that there's a difference there, yes. We also haven't mentioned the fertilizer or running the farm machinery needed to plant and harvest the corn and then transporting the corn to be refined into a fuel. Yes, please don't mention any of that. Whereas once the panels are installed and the grid connection is set up and you've also put in batteries, as everybody is doing, you don't need to do a lot more. And guess what? This may have something to do with the fact that many farmers are quite keen on solar panels. Next story. Now, I've been driving various flavours of Teslas for the last 8 years. They are amazing cars. The team that have developed, designed and built these cars are pretty much the literal cream of the automotive engineering crop. I'm not going to try for one moment to brush over the often horrifying antics of the man we all associate with Tesla, but I will continue to differentiate between him and the actual products and the people who work at the company, the hundreds of thousands of people who make these cars around the world. At our recent Everything Electric event in Melbourne, Tesla were offering the full self-driving (supervised) experience, and I managed to have a go. Now, I don't want to start an argument about Tesla and Waymo and the nitty-gritty of self-driving cars and whether they're sensible or an idiotic idea. I'm just reporting on what the experience was like. I'd never been in a car with full self-driving before. This was the first time I've been in one, and it was one of the latest Model Y vehicles fitted with the very latest version, I think that's important, of FSD (supervised). Let's have a look.
Okay, so when you're ready...
Oh my God, so I just hit that button?
Yeah.
Because that sounded so familiar with autopilot and cruise control. Because I mean, the thing I use the most in mine is cruise control. Mm-hmm. You know, adaptive cruise control is fantastic when you're doing a long drive, but I would never use it somewhere like this. I'm still like having to hold my hands together because you think there's a car coming the other way. Do you? It does know it's there, and the bollards.
It absolutely does. You find you'll adapt very quickly, and ultimately, a lot of people just tend to leave their hands resting on their knees.
Yeah.
It's,
I suppose that's a good thing to do because I'm rather
still very easy to jump up and grab if needed. But.
And then I'm checking the speed limit. We're perfectly good. Yeah. It's just that, you know, that would be a thing I'd be checking as a driver.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that acceleration, we've done 0 to 50k.
Very smooth.
Very, very. I mean, I'm barely aware that it's accelerating, but now the temptation to steer, it's intense.
So what we're finding a lot of feedback from customers is it doesn't drive the way I do, and that's not the intention.
Right.
A lot of people tend to drive a lot more spiritedly than they realise, and you know this is meant to be safe, comfortable. You know, not driving in that way that people want to drive.
I might not be typical of that in the sense that I've become a very conscientious, careful old man. So this is slightly more spirited than I would do.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So what we'll find with that is that often it may ride with this release version. It may ride a little under the speed limit at times. And if you did want to give it some encouragement, you can just give a light tap to the accelerator to bring it up to speed.
Bring it up to speed.
Same as if we're in a multi-lane road and you want to change lanes, you are still able to use the indicators to encourage it to move over.
So all you would do is indicate. Oh, it's indicating now because we're turning here.
So you can still interact with it whilst it's live.
My God. And it's aware that the other vehicles are stopped, and that is extraordinary. That is. I mean, you must have heard this now so many times from people who've been, you know, in one of these for the first time. Mm-hmm. But you know, just I saw a couple I spoke to earlier on who were really delightful and had booked a test drive, and I just saw them getting out of the car, and they just were. You know, there was the old sort of cliche of the EV smile when people first drove electric vehicles and they come back with a grin. They had the EV jaw on the floor grin, you know, completely different. And it's this big. Because also, I mean, I think I can, as I'm reaching a certain age, you know, if you had a car like this say you're in your 80s, you're still you know, you can still drive. You've got a driving license. You passed all the eye tests, all that stuff. It would just be so much easier.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be able to do that. I mean, and then I suppose eventually, then even people who can't drive, who have poor eyesight and all that sort of thing, would be able to use a car. You know,
absolutely, it opens up a world for a lot of people who are unable to drive.
Wow. No, it is very impressive, really. And I mean, effectively, is this, would you call it the first gen, or is it early?
First gen for Australia, but certainly we've had the benefit of building off the development in the US for a long time now. I know a lot of the Americans have been commenting on the Australian forum saying, you guys don't know how lucky you are that this is the version that you get to start with. All the things that they've been through
they've been
along
through
the way.
But I mean,
very fortunate.
The state it's at now, and the one thing we know about technology is
it's only going to improve.
It's only going to improve. It's going to learn better. It's going to learn how to do things.
We might actually indicate indicate here.
Should I buy a second or third-hand electric car? I've heard that the battery will need replacing in the first year I own it, and that will cost tens of thousands of dollars/pounds/euros. This is something we hear all the time, and no matter how many times you say the battery will be fine, as we all know, it's much easier to spread fear, uncertainty and doubt than to spread confidence, certainty and optimism. But the reality of the new crop of battery chemistries and designs is all pointing in one direction: smaller, lighter, more energy dense, and in particular, longer-lasting batteries. Basically, the question we should be asking when considering a second-hand EV purchase is as follows. I'm not sure I should buy a second-hand EV. I've heard that I might have to replace the actual car after about 10 years. Toyota, of all companies, not really at the forefront of the electric vehicle transition, recently announced at the Japan Mobility Show that their next solid-state EV battery will have a much longer life before it loses 10% of its original capacity. Now, just before you go on a rant about how long we've all been waiting for genuine solid-state batteries, just hear me out. Currently, Toyota claim the battery pack in most new electric cars will lose 10% capacity in around 10 years, or roughly 150,000 miles. That's losing 10%. It's not breaking or falling apart or not working anymore. That is operating at 90% of its original capacity. After 150,000 miles, just underlining that, Toyota's claim that their new battery will have lost 10% of its original capacity after closer to 40 years or 600,000 miles. What this says rather clearly is the battery will outlast the car. I can't think of an example of a car that has covered 600,000 miles without multiple component failures, thousands of spare parts, no matter what the make or powertrain is. But I take the point. It's not just Toyota. CATL's Naxtra sodium-ion battery is being marketed as the 90-year battery. CATL claims that these batteries will last up to 3.6 million miles or 10,000 cycles before significant degradation. Bottom line is, there are millions of real justifiable things to worry about in our chaotic and often dangerous world. Battery longevity is not one of them. My wonderful colleague Imogen recently spent a bit of time with the new, rather impressive Cupra Raval. Let's have a look what she discovered.
So we have come to Cupra's headquarters just outside of Barcelona to test this, the brand new Cupra Raval, which is their little teeny tiny EV that's going to be going to production at some point next year. And we are so lucky to be here because this is a pre-production car. And generally with a pre-production car, you expect there to be a few niggles because it's not yet in that full-scale manufacture. You expect a couple of things to go wrong. But it is very brave of Cupra to invite us because they've invited us to test the driving dynamics of this particular model. And we're on these twisty, twiny mountain roads. They want it to feel like a go-kart, and my word, it really, really does. I will say though, we're driving in convoy, and I am very, very far behind the people in front of me, so I think they are slightly putting the car through its paces in a slightly more aggressive way than I am. Regardless, I'm having a lovely time. Now, this is going to come in 3 different variants, so the VZ, the Dynamic Plus and the Dynamic. Now the VZ has a range, or will have a range of about 400 kilometers, so around 250 miles of range, 166 kilowatts of power. We don't yet know the battery size. That will come after the world premiere in April next year, or March next year. Oh, where am I going? Straight. And then the Dynamic Plus and the Dynamic versions have a range of around 450 kilometers, so a little bit more, and presumably slightly less power. I think around 150 kilowatts instead. Now, you can see what Cupra are doing here, because next year we are, of course, also expecting the arrival of the VW ID.2. There has been the phenomenal success of the Renault 5, and of course we're seeing things like the BYD Dolphin and the BYD Dolphin Surf. So this suite of lower cost EVs is arriving, making EVs that much more accessible to that many more people. And now is the time to take those more affordable EVs and make them extremely, extremely fun. So this one, whilst more affordable, is going to be at the upper end of that spectrum, so starting at around €26,000. But if the pre-production is anything to go by, I think this is going to be an extremely fun little car.
A surprisingly positive renewable energy technology story from the USA, with, just as delightfully, a little sting in the tail. Very recently, the world's biggest solar-powered heat battery has come online. This thing is absolutely huge. It contains 100 megawatt hours of over 1,000 degrees centigrade heat, and it can deliver continuous 24/7 high-pressure industrial heat and steam. And all the electricity that is powering this thing is from a solar farm. There's no other energy going into it. I mean, come on, what is not to love? This totally replaces the need for burning gas to run thousands of heavy industrial processes that need high-pressure heat. Okay, as I said, there's a bit of a sting in the tail of this amazing installation. In this particular instance, the heat is being used to run a big oil refining facility in Kern County, in the heart of the Central California oil patch. Doesn't that sound attractive? I want to buy a property there. Isn't that lovely? But it's a very good proof of concept. Normally, that refinery would be using huge amounts of oil, gas, and electricity to achieve the heat they need to crack the crude oil that they've pumped out of the ground into its constituent parts. But now they use solar power, and they're also saving millions of dollars a year. And this massive heat battery is very safe. Even though the internal temperatures can reach 1,500 degrees centigrade, the storage medium used in the Rondo heat battery consists of bricks and wire, abundant and proven materials that can't catch fire, explode, or cause toxic leaks. Bring it on, baby. Let's hope we see many more of those around the world. I'd love to know your thoughts on this topic or any of the others mentioned in this news. This is the last episode of Almost Breaking News of 2025. I'd like to wish you a very happy Christmas and a very successful and happy and safe and peaceful new year. You've got to grip onto these things while you can. And that's it. Please do tell your friends about the Everything Electric shows, both the cars and the tech channel. Please tell them about Almost Breaking News. If they're a bit skeptical about renewable energy and electric vehicles, please do subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, if you have been, thank you for watching.